most anticipated EA games of the year definitely got the EA treatment. Okay, once again, looking past all the glitches and breakdowns and stuff like that I feel like we just should assume is gonna be part of an EA game now. Let's talk about Jedi Survivor, the sequel to Jedi Fallen Order. I just played Fallen Order last year, and like a lot of you, I absolutely loved it. It was so cool going from this famous game that everybody got into to almost instantly going into the sequel, a brand new game that everybody was so hyped for. Did it live up to the hype? Kinda. This is another one of those interesting scenarios where part of the game, the part you would hope would be the best, is actually really good, but then another element of gaming that's been evolving more and more over the years that used to not matter is kind of underwhelming. Cal is back, played again by Cameron Monaghan, but his usual band of misfits aren't with him. He's teamed up with a different band of misfits who are trying to get under the Empire's skin, stopping all sorts of evil plans when suddenly they discover a hidden world that could be a refuge for the few surviving Jedi. That sends Cal on a journey not only to find the entrance to this world, but also the history of what led to its discovery. And also, of course, a reason to get the band back together, man! Okay, so like I said, one part of this game really works and the other isn't awful, it's just not that great. And the part of the game that works is, well, the gameplay. This isn't like a Kingdom Hearts game where everything you learned in the last game is suddenly gone and you have to get it all back. Every single move that you got from the previous one is still here, and it's taught to you again in the beginning, and my god, it feels so good to have these moves throughout the entire game. I really cannot emphasize how refreshing it was to use these moves that you learned at the end of the last one and you get to keep them. You worked hard to get those moves, you worked hard to get these powers, and by god, starting out with them, knowing you're only gonna add more on top of this, was such a good feeling. The combat is so satisfying. My personal favorite is you get to work in a blaster with the lightsaber, and you don't have to keep that. Again, you can do other versions like the double saber or two sabers or whatever. But man, using a laser sword while shooting a gun at the same time, this is where I go, thank god games exist to give me this fantasy. This time around, I played on normal mode, and it was very appropriately named. I felt like I got just the right amount of challenge without it feeling impossible or too easy. The puzzles, which once again are not my strong point, still always felt achievable, and it's the same with the boss battles. I can't really think of any bosses where I would just shout, no, this is impossible, this is way too hard, this is just dumb. It always felt like I could do it, and yeah, eventually I would. Even some of these side missions that would have bosses that just felt impossibly hard, like this Rancor. I don't even know how many times I tried to defeat this thing, but there was always something calling me back saying, I can do this, I just gotta figure out the strategy, and I like a game that does that. There's definitely games that make something stupidly hard, like just clearly unfair hard, but these scenarios always left open that little bit of hope that I could get through it, enough where it always called me back, and like I said, I would eventually find a way. There's also an option I get the feeling is gonna divide people, maybe I'm wrong, but unlike in Fallen Order or other games like this, kind of the Souls-like games, rather than having to work your way all the way back through the path you just came through, you are allowed to teleport through save zones, and for me, I really like that. I am very impatient. I get the feeling some people are thinking that, you know, people are gonna stream these games and maybe they want to make it a little less time consuming if it doesn't have to be, but I also know that's kind of the style. Like, you worked your way all the way through this and now you have to work your way all the way back. That's life, that's how it works. But my thought is, you can still take that path if you want, and chances are you are going to be rewarded for it too, because it is one of those games where you can't get through a certain passage, but maybe once you defeat a boss and go back, you suddenly can. You'll get the device you need to open up that passage and get a reward. So you are given something for your hard work. But yes, if you're an impatient gamer like me and you just kind of want to get back to the story, this is a lifesaver. In my opinion, it's like having one of those playgrounds where everything is plastic and there's no street roads and everything has like soft edges and a kid can't hurt himself on it at all, but right next to it is an 80s playground with the street floors and the metal slide and the merry-go-rounds, and as long as that option is still there, I personally don't mind. With that said, there are a fair amount of side missions in this, and sometimes I even found myself stumbling into it without even knowing. The side missions do take up a fair amount of time, but they also do have a lot of cool stuff in them. They have some really neat cutscenes, some really neat level layouts, and great designs. I love exploring these places. I'm not even that big an explorer when it comes to these games, but this is one of the few times where I kind of said, I feel a little bad skipping this side mission and just going back to the story because I kind of want to see where it was going to take me. The graphics, maybe needless to say, are very impressive, though we did have to tone it down a little bit because I think the higher the graphics, the more it was kind of crashing stream every once in a while and cutting frames and stuff like that. So I feel like streaming-wise, it might make a difference whether or not you play it on your computer or PS5 or whatever. Even with the graphics toned down though, it looks very impressive. I also enjoy that kind of unlike the last game, there's different ways you could get to your destination. Like in this desert planet especially, I feel like whenever you're kind of climbing down these hills or going around in caves and such, it isn't always just one path. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 different ways you can get somewhere, and yeah, once again, it does kind of drive you a little nuts getting to a location and thinking, well, wait, what if there was something good in the cave there? What if there was something in the other direction? And I feel like that's what a good game should do. It should entice you to want to play more. So okay, that's the gameplay. That's the stuff that when I was growing up was everything to a game. The graphics were great, the gameplay was great, the combat was great. It was just all around great. Honestly, in that respect, I liked it even more than Fallen Order. Where it's not as good as Fallen Order is the story. I was really struggling to pay attention to what was going on. And I don't even mean like the story was that complicated, though I guess I can't say it was really simple either. It has its usual side quests and MacGuffins to get to where you need to get to, but the charm, chemistry, and intrigue that was in the first game really is not here. I know what they're trying to do with splitting up the team and then having you reunite with them, and yeah, on paper that sounds like a good idea, but it's just not executed that great. Honestly, the best example of this is right at the beginning. Literally, you are seen captured, and it's kind of like, okay, well, where's this gonna go? You have a little bit of an idea, but what are they gonna do with this? Man, they just keep you in cuffs for a long time. And there's a lot of really pointless exposition and dialogue and story that doesn't really go anywhere, and then when you're introduced to the new band of misfits that apparently you're teamed up with, don't you kinda know what's gonna happen to them? This is one of the most predictable Star Wars stories. Literally, if you watch my stream, I am bragging about what choices I know certain characters are going to make. I mean, like, literally at their introduction. Which wouldn't be so bad if there were other elements to the story and characters that made them interesting, but you take way too long to reunite with your old crew members, and when you do, it's surprisingly anticlimactic. Grease was the only one where I felt a little bit of that sentimental side come out again. Like, it was kind of cool to see him and hear his one-liners and his kind of complaining and everything. It was a good feeling. But meeting up with Cere, it's almost like meeting up with any other character. Like, it is just so empty. I was really shocked because I felt like so much was building up. Why did the team break up? And how is the apprentice going to react when meeting the master again? And it just feels like meeting an old acquaintance. I guess you could argue that's part of the point, like, well, they're still kind of standoffish, they don't want to show their emotions, but even then I feel like you could do something with that, like just a close-up of one of them looking away or looking down or something like that. You don't need much. There is a romance that spawns in this, and I will admit not only did I not see it coming, but I did kind of enjoy it. There were 2 people I didn't think would hook up, but when I really thought about it, it kind of made sense, and they had good chemistry together. Outside of that, there's really only one other surprise that really caught me off guard and was very fulfilling to see. It felt right, it felt earned. I won't give it away, but in terms of the story and the gameplay, it kind of felt like all the pieces matched perfectly there. But I don't know, everything with Fallen Order just had that immediate intrigue. Who is this guy? Who's his friend here? What's he building? Who's this sudden Inquisitor character? What's her backstory? Who are these people that are saving you all of a sudden? You don't know your past? Well, what's your past? What happened? Are you a Jedi? Are you not a Jedi? Everything has this instant connection. Here, Cal's trying to find this place to help out other Jedi, I guess, but we don't really see any of the other Jedi. I don't know, maybe there was like somebody he can help out, and I don't know, Cal doesn't have much urgency to find this place, so I don't have that much urgency. It also doesn't help that every time it looks like they're about to introduce a new main villain, they usually get rid of them in one way or another, so I can't even really connect to somebody to really hate. To go from Trilla, in my opinion, one of the best Star Wars villains of all time, to kind of cafeteria villains where you just kind of pick whichever one you want to be angry at for the moment, it feels like a real downgrade to me. But I'll admit the story isn't awful. There's nothing that happens in it that got me angry or shocked that they made this certain choice. It just feels very standard, which even then wouldn't bother me too much if there was more intrigue to it, and there really wasn't. So I guess on that level, it's not really bad, but it's not really that good either. But once again, we live in kind of an interesting time with games when it comes to that respect, because the gameplay is really great. I loved running around and jumping on stuff and swinging the lightsaber around and shooting the blaster and finding these new creatures to fight and these new worlds to explore, and everything about the gameplay just felt properly built up. The controls were better, the scenarios were better, the enemies were better. I kind of like the idea that the Empire is not the main threat in this, it's just more of a side annoyance. I just find that really funny. But what is the main threat from a story perspective isn't all that interesting. So I definitely still really recommend it. I think it's a lot of fun to play, there's a lot of cool adventures to go on, and a lot of neat creatures and bad guys to chop up. But if you're looking for a story that's on par with Fallen Order, it's not there. You might get some neat lore if you're like a die-hard Star Wars fan and just want to learn everything there is about this universe. But that really is more what it feels like, dispensing information rather than an emotional story. So if you want to return to a galaxy far, far away with some really kick moves, this is the game for you. But if you're looking for a narrative that's on par with the previous game, then the is strong with this one.